Hi, it's Monday, it's 3 o'clock. Welcome to Together Unlocked. I'm Ju Gosling, also known as Ju90. I'm an artist and artistic director of Together 2012, who are bringing you this show today. We're an artist-led community interest company based in the main London 2012 host borough of Newham. With me, where she's been locked down at Shielding since last March, is, as always, the artist and activist, our chair, Julie Newman. We'll do a bit of audio description in a minute, but first we'll go to the other end of our long-wheeled virtual sofa to the West Midlands and get some introductions and audio description from you.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to Monday. I'm speaking slowly to make sure I get not only the right day but the right time of day this week. Yes, welcome to Sutton Coldfield, which is a extremely snowy Sutton Coldfield. Still, I mean it's shrinking a little bit, but it's still about -2 outside. So here I am, Robin Surgeoner. I am business director at Together 2012 and also an artist in my own right, known as Angry Fish. We are in our studio with our lovely warming curtains. It always feels warmer in here than outside. We have a lovely kind of scarlet, I guess, velvet drapes down behind us. I am sporting what is starting to be increasingly dishevelled hair, silvery white. I have glasses with no rims and black arms. A little less shaven today, has to be said. I'm wearing a nice, snuggly, hooded sweatshirt with a purple lined hood, dark blue shoulder and top of the arms, and grey underneath, and a nondescript logo.
Hi, I'm Just Surgeoner. I'm also one of the hosts of Together Unlocked, and I am a PhD student. My audio description: I have slightly messy blonde hair, a little bit of facial hair growing, and today I'm wearing a dark blue t-shirt, and then on the front it has Star Wars in big letters, and it also has Darth Vader's TIE fighter, and I guess a sunrise, sunset, some sort of sun type shape as well.
It certainly looks very funky. As always, very unpredictably, our system has kind of enlarged us a bit. I think our broadcast partners at Be Live are experimenting. So, Julie, I'm just going to move the camera slightly so we can see you properly. Who are you? What do you look like?
I'm Julie. You haven't described yourself.
No, you're going to go first because
right.
you're our chair, the boss.
That's confusing. Well, thank you for moving the camera. I was sitting here thinking that bear has got more camera space than I do. And it's glinting little medal, a little plastic medal. But
what medal? I can't see a medal.
It's a medal that's glinting away there. I've got gold and silver hair. I'm wearing dark rimmed glasses. And today I'm wearing my lovely, I think it's magenta, sort of, it's a sailing top. It's magenta and dark blue. It's fleecy. It's long sleeved. And on one side I have a zip pocket, which is very handy for sailing, I have to say. And I also have little, no, I don't have any little pockets down there. It's a long time since I've worn this. I was so thrilled to find it at the weekend, and then I sort of tied myself up in knots thinking, what's the difference between cerise and magenta? And I decided it's magenta because it's more purple than pink.
And then this is because our audio description as artists is always a nightmare, where we can't remember what we're wearing, even when we can see ourselves on the monitor, and B, can't agree on the colour. But I would say that was green, sort of bluey green, turquoisey green, but definitely not blue around your magenta. And I would describe it as cerise, but we'll argue about that later.
Actually, do you know, I actually went online and checked with some colour patches before the show started.
And you see, I'd say it was fuchsia.
Oh, no.
And if you ask me, I would say the difference between magenta, cerise and fuchsia is the spelling.
Yes, and now we have to work out which one is simply easiest to spell. So we're artists with quite a lot of time on our hands as we're shielding, having been mostly, well, in our case, completely locked down since last March. So I have a self-styled hennaed corona crop. I've got green eyes behind black plastic glasses, pale olive skin, black wrist braces, silver-coloured jewellery, and I have a would we like to take bets on what colour this jumper is?
Turquoise.
Well,
Jade.
It's not jade.
if there's a jade
I would have gone
blue
turquoise.
as opposed to a jade green, but it's a blue woolly jumper over a darker, sort of flecked dark turquoise long sleeve t-shirt. We don't have any snow in London. We had a little bit yesterday and then it turned very quickly to sleet, but it is cold. So you've got snow where you are.
Indeed.
Lots of it.
Well, I won't even keep this one till app date. Then I'm going to just pop up Josh's picture of the snow over the weekend.
Oh my days.
So yeah, this was so for those that can't see, this is a photo taken from the back door into our garden. So there's kind of 3 or 4 large trees in the background, and then in the foreground there's, well, it would be decking and a wall, but it's all just white because it's just covered in snow. And we actually got we got more snow after that photo was taken as well. It's slightly deeper than it is in that picture, but there's probably, I don't know, it's probably a good 6+ inches of snow on the ground in that picture.
Wow.
And did you take it on your phone or did you take it on a camera?
No, that was just with my phone, through the glass as well. It wasn't even just because I could open the door. There was snow in the way. But yeah, that was kind of through the window.
To say that on a Monday, one of the subjects that we cover is photography and filmmaking. On the second Monday of each month, we also have a photographers and filmmakers club on Zoom from 11 to 12. If you're interested in joining in our club's program, we also have weekly art clubs on Zoom and the pop-up poetry club we have by telephone on a Wednesday. Then have a look on our website, look at the 2021 program. All of the details are there, and we will give you more details later in the show. Did you use a filter, any kind of setting, or was it just literally point, shoot, and crop?
It was point and shoot. In terms of the cropping, I used when I took the photo, you can change the aspect ratios on my phone. So you can choose like 16:9, 4:3, square. So I went for square. And then Julie's gonna shudder. Please forgive me. I just used the auto adjust, and then just played around with that slider, which adjusts. There's like 15 different settings in saturation and contrast and all sorts of stuff.
It just took some of the white out of it.
Yeah, but I just used the auto setting and kind of fiddled around with that. That if you want, you can then see how it changes everything else. Just to then kind of find one that I liked.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't shudder at using auto
not at all.
settings. I use auto settings quite a lot. Sometimes they're completely unsuitable, but if I've got a batch to process where it works, or sometimes it's about sort of taking it, duplicating it, and then going back to the original and just seeing if I can get it better than the auto version. But like you say, you can just play around going, oh, that's got a bit overexposed or that's got a bit underexposed. I'll just see what happens. Yeah. So how have you been staying warm? Because one of the things that I think has been concerning me more and more over the winter is the fact that certainly here in Newham, we would usually have what we call warm centres, and they're places they open up, or community centres where older people can go and they can sit in the warm because they can't afford to keep their heating on. And also hot meals are served. And of course, our community cafes are closed, our day services are closed. I mean, has there been anything said in the West Midlands about how people can keep warm?
I think the honest answer is we don't know because um, we've kind of been trying to avoid the news for the last few days. I mean, we're going to talk about well-being, so sometimes you don't need it all. I mean, I think that I know our gas bill's huge, um, and I would be very concerned for anyone who's having to sleep outside, or spend a lot of their day outside, even if they do have somewhere, like a overnight hostel or whatever. I cannot imagine. And of course, there's nobody with most of the shops shut. If you are having to request assistance from passers-by, there aren't any passers-by or very few. I mean, yeah, I mean, and it's one of those things that, you know, our mayor, I won't say Andy Street, there you go, is decided that he would make it that we had no homeless people. He would clear the streets. It was something they could just get change. So it's not surprising that there isn't sort of a lot of information kind of coming out across the media, even when you watch the news about homeless people, because they're trying to um in a not helpful way disguise the levels of homelessness that we have. But I mean, I do know because we're linked to a church, and the levels of use of food bank are phenomenal. They're like 10 times higher than they were a couple of years ago.
Yes, I mean, we won't, we will move on again, but absolutely. And some of the mosques in Newham have literally been feeding hundreds of people a week. So, but just to sort of stick to that kind of while it's so cold, as they say, it's all about the layers. In theory, well, you've got layers on anyway, haven't you? But I was going to say, what the advice was over the weekend is it's much better to have lots of thin layers than one or two thick layers. Wear a hat. I mean, I very often have got a hat on in the house, haven't I, with a short haircut. But you lose a third of your body heat through your head. So if you're feeling cold at home, the first thing to do is stick a hat on. Make hot drinks. If you're worried about the bill, just boil enough water in the kettle for one drink at a time. And of course, move around, which I think, again, for so many of us who haven't got social care at the moment, I think that's been a lot more difficult. But even if you just walk up and down the room, it's good for your health, and it's certainly good for keeping you warm. That brings us on nicely to the fact that today is National Bubble Wrap Day. Yet another day we had never heard of in the past, like Friday when we had ask your cats questions.
Yeah.
We do like to, because it's lockdown, it's shielding, time could just go by in a blur, so we like to mark time passing. But I was most amused to discover that yes, there really is a National Bubble Wrap Day. And the world seems to be divided between people who love to pop it to de-stress, so much so, and we'll come on to our app date in a few minutes, that there are even virtual bubble wrap apps, so you can virtually pop bubble wrap. You don't find it stress-free at all, do you?
No, I hate it.
So
I really hate
that
it.
they're only little ones.
No, it's an unpleasant
I
experience.
mean, a really good one is if it's on the floor as a wheelchair user with
Right.
solid front reels running over it. It's like machine gun fire, or like, I mean, firecrackers. That's fun.
It's probably fun if you do it deliberately. My experience usually is of, yeah, exactly, charging around somewhere like the Olympic Park at the Liberty Festival, running over something that's just been taken off something delicate, and all of a sudden you think you think there's a terrorist incident because the bubble wrap has just gone off. But
the dogs don't like it.
yes, I do. I do miss my power chair, but unfortunately, it's just not accessible to use it at home. I'm not sure I'd be spending my time running backwards and forwards over bubble wrap, but it is lockdown 3. By lockdown 4, I might be doing just that. So, what's the position with bubble wrap and de-stressing in the West Midlands?
I quite enjoy it. It's good fun to pop bubble wrap, I think. Or you?
I mean,
I mean, certainly, I can indulge. I'm not so. I don't know about de-stressing, but more as almost as a fidget toy kind of. If it's there, it's just kind of yeah.
Yeah, it does. I think the same for me. It's more satisfying than anything else. But then I used to play balloon tennis for hours as a kid, so I think easily entertained is something that can apply to me. So
yes, well, of course, there could be that as well. I mean, the other thing we haven't talked about, even though it's the last week of the month, of course, is veganuary, where you don't eat meat all of January. Has anybody been doing that?
What would be the opposite?
Carnivanuary.
Yeah, that would be me.
I think we eat a fair balance. Actually, we had a vegan option last night.
Yeah, we probably eat vegan at least 2 or 3 times a week anyway.
Yeah.
We haven't opted to do veganuary, but I believe again it can be less stressful just to have a nice, peaceful vegetarian diet. So I might have a vegan meal tonight and just carry on popping my bubbles.
I mean, I think it's
Oh, I
kind of
get
relevant.
hours of work I've got waiting.
Is that healthy eating in itself? I deliberately lost 15 kilograms, as my doctor worked out this morning on the telephone. That's how much weight I lost through lockdown.
Wow.
And but I am physically weller. My skin, my stomach, my things of me that as a 50+ gentleman weren't always doing what you wanted them to do, shall we say. But actually, by just eating much more healthily, more fruit, more food with more water in it. You know, we don't we literally fry almost nothing other than the odd egg. It's all kind of grilled or broiled, I suppose they call it, roasted. But it's actually just far less access to fast food, which is sugar and grease, and fat laden, has actually made me feel much healthier.
And do you think you were eating a lot of fast food because you were having to sort of rush from training to training or job to job or having to do other things in the house?
I think it's probably a combination of liking a certain chain that do a quarter pounder with cheese on it. And I mean, and actually really enjoying it. But often, yeah, it was kind of like, oh man, I got to be at the pool for 7. What can I get on in the morning? I mean, like Saturday mornings, yeah. Rather than be healthy and have a cereal and a coffee before, it's buy a coffee and another branded egg and sausage McMuffin. Oh damn. Yeah, but I do. I mean, so I mean, the circumstances have probably aided that, but it's it's the desire to actually feel a bit healthier and actually with that feeling safer. I decided that I would try to get more healthy because of the warnings about being overweight and not being able to deal with COVID so well. Because you be compromised, and that was probably the biggest instigator for me that went, well, come on, you need to be here just to annoy him.
And
So
I think just generally, it's a really serious point, isn't it? The fitter we are, the less likely we are to have accidents, the less likely we are to bother the NHS. And that's kind of, yeah, my emergency plan, if you like, is to try not to get ill by not to get, don't get overtired when you're likely to have accidents. Don't be so unfit you're likely to have accidents. The thing that I've given up, I've gone dry this January, not sugar, because I have to have sugar, but I think like maybe more than one other person in the world, I got into bulk buying confectionery on the internet when lockdown one started on the grounds that everything was so awful it surely couldn't matter if you ate a lot of chocolate. And I think by the time I'd got to the festival, I was so busy that I had lost quite a lot of weight for me last year, you know, not deliberately at all. And that was kind of the same thing, not having those opportunities, you know, because we weren't at the there was nobody to nip out to the cafe to get a vegan cake or something because we've just been stuck at home. Just because of the added danger of deliveries, we've stopped having our regular Chinese food and so on. So I'd lost quite a lot of weight, but I was eating an awful lot of kind of, catering size, say, jelly babies and ruffles and so on. So my January thing has been kind of, I will not order any sweets till Julie buys me quite a lot for Valentine's Day. And then I won't eat any again till she buys me quite a lot for Easter. But it's also encouraged me to eat more because instead, you know, properly,
Yeah.
instead of going, oh, I feel hungry, I'll just reach for another kind of jar. In the meantime, I've got a nice plan to turn some of these Ruffles jars into special handmade lights for one of our February craft ideas. Even
We,
if
we,
I was eating the sweets, I thought, my goodness, I can put all of the wrapping outside. I'll just finish this one, get another one, and then I can have a matching pair.
I mean, the other thing you can do, I mean, we always used to do because Josh always got far more Easter eggs than he could eat. And we would just melt them down and turn them into chocolate crispies. And chocolate crispies made with Easter egg chocolate are the business.
Well, of course, I'm allergic to milk, which does make it slightly more difficult because by the time you've got the expensive vegan chocolate egg, you probably wouldn't want to melt it down anyway. But this brings me nicely on from our kind of, yes, I mean, I think we do talk about well-being, and I think particularly this month that's really important. But part of well-being, of course, is if you've got a suitable smartphone using the NHS COVID-19 app. I was most amused, but it was just proof it was working properly that Keir Starmer is now self-isolating for the third time because he's been alerted that he's been too close to someone. So back in August, September, which seems a long way away now, we were involved in piloting that COVID-19 app. So we've been very pleased to see how well it's working. But today we're not talking about those things, apart from, like I say, to remind you, if you don't have it, maybe you've got a new smartphone around Christmas, reinstall it, install it. You can get it from either app store, whether it's the Android Google App Store or the Mac Apple App Store. But Robin, in fact, it's usually Josh taking photos, but now I have a photograph that Robin has now used an app for. So I'm going to start by popping this photo up and you can just tell us about it.
Oh,
Okay. So this was Baby. I mean, and if you remember last week, we didn't have the curtains up, but I dressed the equipment behind us to make it look less ugly. And at which point the cat made an immediate dive for, and then just sat very, very proudly upon it like a queen. So that was just an iPhone photo.
Okie doke. So I'm just going to take that off and put up what you did to it.
Okay, so I've been seeing Julie's apps and stuff and kind of really impressed with them. We still actually have this particular picture of Josh that's not on the screen. That isn't Josh. But I was always fascinated by the photo booths where it would automatically sketch your picture and it would actually show the pencil doing all the drawing and stuff. Now I couldn't find that on the App Store, but I thought actually I like color pencil, colorings, and I thought, well, what can I do? And so I went on to the App Store and I found one called Photo Sketch, Sketcher and Maker. And to be honest, it couldn't have been simpler. I opened the app and went to my photo and literally clicked it with the mouse, dragged it in. There was no copying, no anything. It was literally pulled it across the screen, put it in, and then it had a number of options on the on it. So it defaults to a black and white picture, but then you can colorize it, and then you can put different you could do a mix of colors. I didn't change the colors it presented, but you could change the brightness and the contrast. So I added a little bit of richness to it because it was a bit washed out to start with. And apparently, I mean, it has pen size and pen color as well. So I get, the sketchy bit of it, you can make finer or thicker as well. And it's really cool, really, really, but really effective.
I think one of the nice things about it as well, for anybody who was watching last week, and of course the recording is up still on the website, is Julie was looking at an app called Waterlog, weren't you?
Yes.
And Waterlog does a very similar thing, very simply, and it's we didn't say last week, Waterlog is a free app that's available for every platform, including the PC. But that makes a photo look like a watercolor painting. And I think the other thing about this is I really remember you saying last week, it's a terribly easy way of creating illustrations. So if you're doing a piece of creative writing, or indeed any kind of writing, or you want to illustrate a song, it's just about taking what, with the best will in the world, is not necessarily the most exciting photo and making it look quite special just by putting it through this app. And because they're standalone, I think it does make it simpler. There's lots of filters and things. If you spent over £100 to get Photoshop elements, then of course there's lots of different things you can do, but you've got to know how to use the whole of Photoshop to do it. And you've got to faff around with a load of things that you probably can't be bothered with. So that's one of the things that I think is such an advantage of this kind of app. Have you used it at all, Josh?
Not that specific, kind of either of those specific apps, but similar kind of filter programs, things to make things look like comic books and stuff like that. Mainly when you're bored, and just download it to fiddle with stuff. But yeah, they are, like you said, they're really simple, and you can get some kind of really interesting and kind of striking effects from it.
I mean, and I will say, I will send the link in, so it will go up on the highlights and links page. It was $3.99, which
any of it, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, I can still see it because it's on my other monitor. I mean, for example, it makes our floor look so much nicer than it actually is.
Well, that's the thing about playing around with so much of this stuff, isn't it? Indeed, there's a little clip of it on our website under the Join In From Home program, because we have a challenge to join in from home with the dance club. The dance club takes place on the fourth Monday of the month from 11 to 12 on Zoom at the moment. So we had dance club this morning, but we filmed this very first initial little exercise in front of some incredibly tatty, faded old blue curtains at the community centre where we were working. And just by playing with the saturation and the contrast, because you have very similar things on the video, they look like they're in a theatrical studio. The curtains are black. You can still see everybody. The colour really pops out. And it is just about fiddling around with it. I always think you can spend 10 times as long fiddling with a photo as taking it, but you can get 10 times the results.
I just wanted to go back to Josh's photo of the snow. Something that I noticed over the weekend when it was snowing outside is how the colours change in the garden. With all that white, it seems to just white out the colours that you would ordinarily see. And just thinking back to your photo, Josh, something I found really interesting looking at it was how the colours of your trees change, because they're trees that we've seen quite a lot sort of during the Together Unlocked shows. So I feel as if I know them by, remotely, obviously. Yeah. But I thought it was really interesting how the snow changed the colours in your garden so dramatically.
Yeah, I think on the original picture, I mean, they're still trees, they still look green, but they're almost kind of grey green, like, they do, just because there's so much white in the in the picture, and the sky was fairly kind of bright white as well. even the picture's not kind of overexposed, but it just looks washed out. So I think that's what with playing around with the settings, it kind of dropped the brightness a little bit, but really kind of bumped the saturation. So the sky looks a little bit bluer, but the green of the trees kind of really comes through. They almost look greener than they actually are.
I mean,
go on.
I was going to say, interestingly enough, we didn't have any sun yesterday, but when I got up this morning, the sun was shining across the back of the garden and into some of the neighbours' trees, and actually, and the sky was clear, and it looked. And I did take a photo. I just didn't have a chance to send that in as well, because it's not as framed as Josh's. I just took it because of the colours, so I will send it you. But it was kind of like, actually the sun did what sun did naturally. It's just it lifted. It was like, I was just like, it was just incredible, and you could really see the difference between where the sun was and then where there was something in the line of the sun was still kind of in shadow, I suppose. And it was absolutely incredible, really. And so I will send that in as well.
I think it was quite interesting talking about the apps we just were in terms of like the waterlogged and things. When I'd kind of got the image that I was happy with, but then I just kind of kept playing around with it because I had nothing else to do, and kind of took it to the extreme in those settings, and kind of did a little bit of manual stuff to kind of really get kind of the limit of what you can set it to, and actually kind of with that effect we were talking about, it almost made it look like a drawing or a painting with the saturation, and that was purely just by fiddling with the settings, not even putting a filter on it. So it's really interesting the different things you can get just from fiddling around with the settings.
Well, one of the things I was going to say is, of course, framing isn't the be all and end all either, because sometimes you just see something and you think that's only going to last a second. I've just got to point and shoot, but you can always crop it. And I think that's something to bear in mind. And same as Josh says, if you've got some kind of picture, the great thing about digital is all that information is there. It might look overexposed, but once you really start playing with it, you'll discover that color is there. And it is just about, just adjusting things. I was remembering, and I wish I'd still got a copy myself. One year I made fridge magnets to put in with my Christmas cards, and I had a picture of my dog at the time, Jeannie, who's Westie, out in the snow. What I did was use an app, probably Photoshop, to cut that picture of the dog. So the dog was in what do you call those jackets?
High vis?
No, the jackets mods wear.
A parka.
Yeah, a parka, exactly.
Right,
So
yeah.
you'd got the Westie in its own parka with the snow coming down. I cut that out and put it on a bright red background.
I was going to say you put it on a Lambretta.
And then I got I went to one of these free clip art sites and got a very stylized snowdrop or two and dropped those in the app. So it became this kind of bright red square, which I was then able to print out, because you can get magnetic paper for printers. So you can print out magnets, on ordinary, it's photographic magnet paper, really, isn't it? But it's all very thin, but I was then able to just cut them up, so I could print out an entire sheet of, or several sheets of A4, where I just repeated it across the page, cut them out, and put them in with the Christmas cards. And then the next year someone tried to give one back to me saying, "Oh, you've got a Westie." And I said, "Yes, and it's exactly that Westie that's on that magnet I gave it to you last year." But Julie, you wanted to move on and talk about film language, didn't you?
Film language. Possibly. I didn't know I was going to talk about
Well,
language.
I suppose it depends what you mean by language. I mean, what I mean by film language is a visual language. The sort of the way we tell stories through pictures might be more appropriate. And you'd been starting off by looking at classic films, hadn't you?
I have been for the last few weeks very interested in the classic black and white films, which are available on YouTube. And then I heard a radio excerpt on a life of famous people, etc., and it was Alfred Hitchcock. And it renewed my interest in Alfred Hitchcock, because in this program they were talking about how he used silence, because he actually started filmmaking as a silent filmmaker. And even though he progressed, and he progressed all the way through from black and white films to color films, he still used for a point of impact, he used a silence. So I thought, well, I'll look at a film which I don't know, and I ended up looking at Secret Agent, which was made in 1936. And I started to watch it through, and I thought, oh my goodness, this man was, I always knew he was skilled. I mean, let's not pretend otherwise. But when I started to watch it, I was really, really taken with how he uses visual effects to enhance and further a storyline without actually using spoken word. And it really struck me, and I thought, well, this is something that, well, when we're bored, young Josh, when we're bored and looking for something to do, have a look through some of the old films on YouTube or wherever, whichever you can access, and just notice some of the filmmaking things that they did, the filmmaking hints, if you like, that you can pick up from them. Alfred Hitchcock is a very good one to watch, I think.
Yes, and I think we've talked over the last couple of weeks about how so many older films are now available free on YouTube. Possibly not the best quality, so I think we advertised on Friday, there was a Sophie's Choice thing at the weekend.
Yes.
And there was when I looked at the event, it says, well, you can watch it free on YouTube, or you can pay a bit and watch a better quality version here, and here. But I think the great thing is to be able, just to be able to access it without going out or doing anything. So the screenshots we've got are actually, somebody's taken the TV version and put it on YouTube. So we just need to bear that in mind. So this is part of the opening sequence, isn't it?
Yeah, it's called Secret Agent, and you can see it's just very plain. But when you start to look at the picture, it's got soldiers with rifles marching in the background. So that in itself is actually telling you something. Bear in mind, this was filmed in 1936, but it was about unrest in Palestine with Turkish armies. And that featured a lot during the story as it progressed.
Okie doke. So I'm going to put the next one up.
What you had was a man. Sorry.
No, it was just to wait till it was on the screen.
I beg your pardon. What you have is a man with a hat on, again, very stylized, 1930s, and the end of a telescope, and he's about to look into the telescope. These are just screenshots that I took just to demonstrate, what I was going to be talking about. But that's a telescope which is in a window looking out onto the Alps. He's in Switzerland. He's looking out onto the Alps and watching what's happening through the telescope. And then what he's seeing are two men in the snow approaching a cliff. And you can see, if you look at the screenshot, you can see there's where the circle goes round from the telescope. They've actually done something, I think, again, quite clever there to demonstrate that this is what he's seeing. They made it look as if it was a circular.
Oh, I see. And of course, if it was the whole width, it would be more obvious. Yes, I see that now.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's Peter Lorre at the bottom on the left. And he's got a sort of a very inappropriate sort of straw hat with a scarf around his neck and a shirt and a jacket. And in front of him is a taller man who's looking out into the distance with a fedora, a little rucksack, and a thicker coat on. And Peter Lorre's right hand is just coming up just behind him. Now, meanwhile, back in the living room, what's happening is you've got a little dog, a little dachshund type dog, scrabbling frantically at the door. And I was watching this and I thought, why is the dog scrabbling at the door? And it was doing so very insistently. The lady who's the housekeeper picks the dog up and brings it away from the door because They're in the living room, and there's 3 people there, which you can't see at the moment, but there are 3 people there, and the dog's proving to be a distraction. And sure enough, she puts it down, and the dog scrabbles at the door again, very, very insistently. And then what happens ultimately is that the dog, there should be another picture of the dog howling, but it's obviously not come up. But you get
it might be a bit difficult to tell anyway.
Yeah, you get an image of the dog sitting by the door, raising its head and howling. And at that point, you realize it's howling for its master, who has just been pushed off the cliff edge by Peter Lorre. And you get a shot of the man with the telescope, just be looking very, very shocked and saying, no, don't do that type thing. So you've got 3 aspects of a piece of action with minimal language, sort of like, oh, what's wrong with the dog? Oh, I don't know. Sort of like, no, don't do that. And then, oh, and, it tells a complete story.
I think it's really helpful when we're trying to write our own scripts to remember that film is, as we say, 50% image and 50% sound. But language never played a part at all to start with. And you can really see that Hitchcock's coming out of the silent era, can't you? Where the language absolutely wasn't there unless it was absolutely critical. Many decades ago, as well as training in film, I trained in comics. And what's so great about comics is you have to get it down to the key bits of the action, because it's the brain that's filling in everything else. It's like when they talk about storyboarding, that is really what a storyboard is for a film, isn't it? Is capturing those key frames. It's as if the film was a comic. What were those key frames going to be? I mean, Josh is the great comics person, or at least he's our resident nerd, although I always thought I was the resident nerd, so maybe it's just ages of a nerd. But do you have any thoughts around comics and visual storytelling, Josh? Because I know you like a lot of the anime and manga.
I mean, I used to read more comics when I was kind of much younger, and it's not something I don't really do anymore. Just no particular. I just kind of don't really read them, but watch all the kind of Marvel films and stuff.
You watch the films instead.
Yeah. I think partly it's just there's too much to keep track of. I can't, but. No, you're absolutely right in the sense that you to a certain extent you're limited in what you can show. You can't show every millisecond of movement, because otherwise you just flick through it. You might as well watch a film. That's where those kind of those little flip picture book things. So, yeah, you have to show those key. I don't want to say key frames because that's a specific thing in animation, but important frames we'll go with.
I think it's the crucial ones. I mean, what we were taught is if you don't need to see it for the story, it shouldn't be there. And that's very much the kind of rule for film scripting. I think absolutely have to be there, it shouldn't be there. And when you think about the amount you have to pack in, whether it's to a sort of, a single frame cartoon has still got a huge amount of action packed in. So if you can get rid of something, then it allows you time for everything else.
I think that sequence of events took place in about 2 minutes. Excuse me. And I think if it was being filmed today, it would be filmed very differently.
And is that one of the opening sequences, or is it later on?
No, it's a little bit in. But it's there were a couple of other things that took place in Switzerland as well. Could you I'll just get a drink.
What were you going to say, Josh?
Yeah, and for anybody who noticed, we've just been visited by a fluffy molting, has to be said, molting tabby cat. you can see pictures of all the cats and dogs that wander around our show in the West Midlands, in London, in Epping, in Hastings, on our highlights, well, below our highlights and links page. So if you go to our website, www.together2012.org.uk, we have a Together Unlocked TV page where you can watch this show with live captions. And it also has all of the recordings of previous shows. Underneath that, we have a highlights and links page where we'll put links up to everything we've talked about today and put up any videos. And you can also go to a page called Animal Hosts. We've just been rejoined yet again by Dolly. She really wants to have her own show.
I think she wanted to say captions, not captions. What
Yeah, I
can
think
say, I'm so sorry. Just to finish off very briefly, it was a couple of minutes of footage that showed that, and I think today, in today's filming experiences, I would expect that to be played out, shooting directly on Peter Lorre and the man he's about to push over into the abyss. Abyss.
You say abyss, I say abyss.
Yeah. But I think what's interesting is that you can get three perspectives in such a short period of time.
Yes, and I think that's so interesting because, yeah, film's so much about voyeurism anyway, and whose perspective has the viewer got, but you're switching between these different things, aren't you, including the dog. I mean, it even could have been an opening sequence. We've talked quite a bit over the months about opening sequences, which is something we've done a lot of in filmmakers clubs and the different ways they function. But you could have that as, if it was a film just about what happened after that, you could do that as part of the opening sequence and you could have set the entire story up. But I still think you chose it because it had all those pictures of the dog.
No, I didn't. Actually, it's worth watching. I got completely gripped by it, and also as a bit of social history, in 1936, it was a very difficult time for the world.
Yeah, well, I think what we call film noir, which I'm pretty sure The Secret Agent falls into, films that were certainly initially made in the 30s, mostly in black and white, very, very stylized. I did a whole term course on it at university, but they're great films to watch to learn film language. The Hitchcocks alone, you could probably learn more from watching the Hitchcocks than you could from 3 years at university. So, oh, look, that's 50 grand saved, and all the films are on YouTube for free. Next.
Yeah, I think the other thing, like going back to like the visual storytelling and kind of what gets shown and what doesn't, I think it's important about the context of where that fits in. So look, for example, using a fight scene, because it's the easiest way to demonstrate it. If it's the start of something, you might get a frame. If it's visual, you'll get somebody, clenching a fist or winding up to punch. You'll get their hand in the air. You'll get the first kind of contact. But then in subsequent frames, it'll just be somebody in the air or somebody getting kicked because it doesn't need that setup for each one. And then, if they then want to show something doing something really powerful, it might slow down and you'll get more pictures. If it was a kind of comic book or then it's same in film. If you want to demonstrate that somebody's doing something really cool or somebody's doing something really strong, you might cut to slow-mo or something like that. And it's a kind of understanding how much you need to put in to convey what you want to show. And I think that's, with the silent film stuff, what you were saying, it shows the really important information that, they don't need 30 pictures of somebody deciding to do something every time they decide to do it. If they're already in the middle of the situation, they just do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
And of course, one of the reasons we know how to read that is because we all do. speak film language. And, you know, we start as children, you know, with our picture books before we get any words in those picture books, and we learn the language of visuals. And I think if you're thinking about making your first film, or indeed your mid-career and having a panic, we're all really very sophisticated at understanding visual language. And I think we just have to sort of look inside ourselves and say, yes, we do know this. What we need to do is take that knowledge as we sort of receive films. You know, we kind of watch films, we're the consumer of films, but we can use that knowledge in our own films, you know, to sort of, yeah, as a filmmaker. But I think that's beginning to bring us to the end of our talks about films and photography this week. We'd love to see films you're making, hear about films in progress, come onto the show, tell us about your film project. Maybe you're looking for other people to help you make your film. Maybe you want to promote your film to get some funding. Just drop us a line, info or TV at together2012.org.uk. Now, usually at this point, we would be flagging up the Clockwork Paralympics, because I forgot to say in my audio description, I think because Julie started it, that behind us we have a teddy bear wearing a graduation outfit and sporting a gold plastic medal. This teddy bear is called Matilda, and she's wearing her graduation outfit because last Wednesday was the inauguration, and it was as close to a formal teddy bear as I have. But traditionally, each week we race Clockwork toys for the dubious honour of one of our teddy bears to wear a medal for the week. The teddy bears then take part in the International Virtual Bear Hunt, so that children who, well, clearly are not leading the lives they used to be leading can take part in bear hunts, either by looking for teddy bears in windows as they go for their daily exercise, or looking out for them on screen. However, this week, the Clockwork Paralympics is postponed till Friday. I know I couldn't cancel it altogether. That would be too much. It's bad enough that Japan is already looking dodgy, but the Clockwork Paralympics will be going ahead on Friday, because Wednesday, as many people probably already know, is Holocaust Memorial Day. We have a special pre-recorded, well, it will be pre-recorded by Wednesday. We're putting it together at the moment. It's a special show looking at Holocaust Memorial Day from the perspective of ourselves as presenters and co-hosts, as disabled people, but also as lesbians and as Jewish people, as Roma people. So that's, I won't say I'm looking forward to it, but I'm very, very pleased that we're doing it. We'll be telling you more in the programme about how you can join in, but there's going to be an online ceremony from 7 o'clock on Wednesday. It's really, I think, the first time that there's been this international online gathering, and people are being asked to put a candle in the window, which, as I said on Friday, in our case, we would always say battery operated. And then on Friday as well, of course, it's our dressing up to go out to stay in day. So please dress up in your best outfits. Choose somewhere to go. Could be real, could be imaginary. Send us your photos and videos. We'll also be recommending, as always, something for the weekend that you can do online or offline from home, and usually for free. This week, we're not going to end the show relaxing with Awa as usual. And I have to explain why, because Awa has been running her weekly relaxation spot for us for some months now. But the router that was being used by ACT UP Newham to record it blew down in last week's storm. We very much hope that a new router will be installed on the roof, because that's what it takes in the wilds and woodlands where they're staying. So yes, we hope very much it will be restored on Wednesday, in which case we will also have a virtual nature walk with assistance dog Merlot on Friday, and if not, that will be back next week too. So instead, we've prevailed upon our para athletes. why have a dog and bark yourself, we say, to do a lovely relaxation for us instead. So what I'm going to do, I think, Julie, because it's going to be slightly difficult for Robin and Josh to run a relaxation staring at us with a cat that's now determined to get back and join in, is we will pop you solo on the screen. We will, behind the scenes, be taking part in your relaxation and look forward to seeing everybody. Well, we won't see you, but we hope you will watch us on Wednesday for the Holocaust Memorial Day special. So over to the Surgeoners.
Well, hi. So, yeah, welcome to the first Relax with Robin.
It's not very relaxing at all.
It was. So, we're gonna just we're gonna do something for anyone who actually, well, it works for everybody who is sitting down, but something you can do if you can only sit down, i.e., not able to do exercise stood up. So the first thing we're going to do is wherever you're sitting, is just let your arms drop down at your sides. Start to feel the tension coming out of your fingers. What we want to do, we've just done an hour of live broadcasting, or almost an hour. And that in itself, it has its moments. We're always kind of ready to relax afterwards. So we're dropping our arms and just very gently, if you can, rotate your shoulders backwards. All we're looking to do, we're keeping our heads nice and still at this point. And just feel it coming out your fingers. Give those hands a shake if you are able to do that. And then what I'll do for relaxing most of the time is I will sit with my hands crossed in my lap. The next thing we're going to think about is where we feel, a lot of us feel tension is in our necks. Now, necks are very delicate areas, so we have to be very careful with this. But all we're going to do is we're just going to take one ear down to the shoulder. And the important thing about this is that you are just the weight of your head is going across. You're not lifting your shoulder to your ear. You're taking your ear to your shoulder and just letting the weight of your head, holding it there for a few seconds. And we come to upright again, stop in the middle, and then go across to the other side. Now, if we were doing this at the end of a land work session, we'd be doing 30 seconds or so on each side. Now, one thing you must never do when doing exercises is take your head through a complete circle. They used to show that. Do not do that. You can just now take your head forwards, rest your chin on your chest, or in my case, chins, obviously. And then you can just ever so slightly, okay, feel that stretch. Okay, so hopefully we're feeling nice and relaxed. Take some nice, going to move into our breathing out of this now. Now, as a former Paralympic athlete, learning to be relaxed is a really, really important part. You have to be most relaxed at the point before you have to be most excited. So there are lots of skills involved in doing that. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to breathe in through our nose. And out through your mouth. And do this 5 times. Just hold for a second at the top. And out. As you're doing this, if you have the balance and you can shut your eyes, not everyone can shut their eyes, I realize that, and with balance, or put your arms down, I will lean on my brakes. Just close your eyes as you're doing this and start to imagine that you're in the place you've always wanted to go on holiday, a relaxing holiday, not an activity holiday. And just you are on that sun lounger or in your chair in the sun, in an evening sun, just relaxing. Imagine that cool breeze just cooling you down. At that point, I need to say goodbye, and then I may go to sleep. Have a fantastic rest of Monday, and we'll see you in person on Friday afternoon. Goodbye from us.